How interesting. Just look at that. Why, just look at those peculiar markings.
The bullsquid is simultaneously one of the most enduring and most forgotten enemies in the Half-Life series. It almost appeared in more games, and it's very similar to things that have. People love the bullsquid, it has its own website, yet it hasn't actually appeared in a game in nearly 20 years. So I'm here to ask the question, why? Why hasn't it ever returned? And that's it, questions asked, leave your answers in the comments, bye! No, but for real though, let's talk about it. The bullsquid is technically the second alien Gordon encounters, after these guys. A strange beast with 2 legs, mouth tentacles, and leopard-like spots, it's one of the most formidable foes in the early chapters of the game. Nothing short of a shotgun, revolver, or, well, any of the massively more powerful weapons found later in the game will do. Their behavior as an enemy is rather limited. They can bite, hit players with their tails, and spit some of the least accurate projectiles I've ever seen in a game. They're at their strongest in corridors with little room to maneuver, and honestly, their greatest downfall as enemies is that they can't appear in greater numbers outside of very specific situations. This is due to their aggression. Bullsquids will attack each other, headcrabs, and any human being that crosses their paths. They won't bother any other enemies, but that can be explained by different places on the food chain and, well, you kinda have to go out of your way to force those encounters. Bullsquids usually serve as set dressing more than anything else. They're at the center of a lot of small set pieces meant to expand the world and make it feel more alive. Like, it's never gonna hit a player from here. In fact, let's see how long it takes. The purpose of this sequence is twofold, to show players how the bullsquid will act when it is a threat later on, and to establish these aliens as living creatures, part of their own ecosystem. In fact, the crabs used to fight back on the old CD release of the game, but time has not been kind to some of Half-Life's finer details. Bullsquids are often found in the water, emphasizing their aquatic side, making them the only canonically amphibious creature in the series. A greater focus on their behavior as animals is evident in the way bullsquids can be seen eating pieces of meat, drinking excessively, and using Half-Life's famous sense of smell AI. This last part seems to hint toward an unfinished mechanic. In the office complex freezer, there are 2 bullsquids and a few big slabs of meat hanging from the roof. If you smack one and then run away around the corner, there's a good 12% chance that one of the bullsquids will sniff the air, wander over to the meat, and start chowing down. It's like some kind of baiting system, and you can do the same thing with the headcrabs in the area. Things like this really make me wonder what this game could have turned into with just a few extra months in development. Bullsquid spit is extremely toxic, and they're frequently seen chilling in and around toxic waste. Half-Life's expansions, well, expand on this, placing them in the biodome in opposing force, and there's whatever the hell's going on here in decay. Ew. Speaking of expansions, the bullsquid has 4 different looks across versions of the game, with their HD pack and PlayStation versions differing slightly in their textures, and the biggest change being these spikes on the tentacles, and the unreleased Dreamcast port has a lumpy new model and blue spots that make it look diseased. I think it's pretty telling that this guy was changed so little compared to other monsters in the HD pack. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. To fight a bullsquid, use the shotgun, revolver, pistol from far distances, or explosives if you really want to. Getting within melee range is a terrible idea. Oh, and while it's never explicitly stated in-game, current continuity points to a bullsquid being responsible for Eli's lost leg when he and Kleiner were climbing over a barrier to get into a Combine city. And as far as official, released content goes, that's where the bullsquid story ends. Series writer Mark Laidlaw has said that they still exist in the world as of Half-Life 2, even though we've never seen them again. But it wouldn't be a Cascade video without a... Okay, there's a ton to go through here. I mean, there's always a lot of weird beta stuff for these games, but there might be more for the bullsquid than any other enemy in the series. So let's start with the first game. The earliest appearance of the beast is in this piece of concept art from when Half-Life went by the name Quiver. It's called the land squid and appears much larger than the creature in the final game, with added eyes, spiked hooves, and an exposed spine. Later on, we have Ted Backman's drawing of the creature with a much closer look to the one we know and love. Now, even though the land squid is just so obviously a bullsquid, Ted said he showed his image to Gabe on his own. Ted's was the design used for its first model, a big lump of peach-colored flesh like all of Backman's other work. I'm willing to bet this was what led to the early name Bull Chicken, which you can still find in all the files. Fun fact, it isn't given any name at all within the game itself, just like every other alien. Isn't that kinda weird? I think that's kinda weird. The chicken skin squid didn't last, and this was the next known look. It's bizarre, to say the least, like something out of a cartoon. I guess the stripes, the colors, and the spots are supposed to make it seem dangerous, like one of those poisonous frogs. I don't know. It's not great. The model was used for a while, including in the famous leaked Half-Life Alpha build. It seems the name was changed while this model was in use, judging by their presence in one of these Half-Life Monster of the Week things published by Online Gaming Review. They describe it as far larger than it actually is, and point out that, quote, the creature would attempt to eat or mate with almost anything that crosses its path, without regard for species or any apparent reproductive necessity. Sounds like Ted Backman stuff to me. The final design is the one we know today, and it can still be seen in earlier screenshots, like this one with the Alpha Scientist, and this, which uses crates in place of the miscellaneous food we see in the final game. Another small note, the Bullsquid spit was originally a model. It doesn't look great, I'm glad they changed it. Now we move on to their near appearance in Half-Life 2, one of the greatest tragedies of the game's development. Like most of Half-Life's other wild aliens, the Bullsquid was to appear outside the city in the sequel, stalking the canals and wasteland. It features in not one, not two, but 3 vignettes by Mark Laidlaw, and we know of 2 models used for it. This ugly red one, used throughout the leaked maps, and a green one, first found as a texture back in 2003 before the entire model was leaked over a decade later. Their behavior is similar. They'll fight headcrabs and players by biting, swinging their tails, and spitting, the latter rendered with models as well as sprites. Apparently Valve's first tests with it weren't much to write home about. The big open areas really hurt its combat potential. So later tests placed it in the canals, swimming around and hiding underwater to lunge at players. This was found to be too effective, making playtesters afraid of the water altogether, so the creature was entirely cut in the end. It lasted quite a long time, likely only removed months before the game's release. Their next almost appearance comes from an unused fisherman line, known only through leaked captions, referring to bullsquids trapped beneath a hatch in earlier versions of the Lost Coast demo. Apparently, the powers preventing more squiddy goodness in these games outweighs the significant power of the glorious, enigmatic fisherman.
Hey! You there? Wait a minute now, aren't you? You are. You're that scientist chap, Friedman. Fishman, am I right?
And now, for real, that's where the story ends. Or is it? Half-Life 2 Episode 2 introduced the Antlion Worker, a new enemy that spits toxins at players from far away, much like the Bullsquid. Half-Life Alyx has a very similar enemy called the Antlion Spitter, and there's proof of a connection here in Episode 2's developer commentary.
Unlike normal antlions, the worker chooses to avoid direct confrontation, skulking in the background and lobbing acidic globs from a distance. The spitting behavior was derived from the Bullsquid of Half-Life 1, but was updated to fit the more physical world of Half-Life 2. To that end, the spit globs are not merely sprites, but physically simulated objects, flying through the air along realistic trajectories.
So perhaps, in some distant way, the Bullsquid still exists in the newest entries of the series. Except that's bullshit! You know the Hound Eyes and controllers got a reference in Alyx? The fucking controllers! That means the Bullsquid is the only cool Half-Life enemy that hasn't reappeared in anything since the first game. There's even art for an unfinished trading card, with the HD pack design. It's a disgrace. Such a fucking disgrace. Well, at least we've got bullsquid.com to keep us company. If you enjoyed, like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell, share the video, you know how it goes. Oh, I also make other videos that aren't Half-Life related, and you might like those too.
I will see you up ahead.